Good day. I am Jim Rothrock, the Commissioner of the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm also responsible for the Vocational Rehabilitation Program in our Commonwealth, which has recently been doing some research on how we can make our program more effective for those with Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. We have been fortunate to partner with our friends from the Virginia Commonwealth University RRTC to develop some exciting research that we hopefully will be sharing with you and let you know some of the things that we're learning about how to better use our VR system to respond to these youngsters. Today we're going to talk about why we need research. Richard Kriner will talk about how we're using some evidence-based research outcomes to promote a better VR program. And finally, and really quite important, Jessica Steele, one of our VR counselors in the Fairfax office, will tell you about some of the things she is now doing with this population to be more successful. In the 80s and 90s, I was a lobbyist, and I worked a great deal with the General Assembly, and on occasion had an opportunity to give to certain members of our state legislature an overview of some of the dynamics and demographics relative to the disability community. At that time, I remember distinctly going before them and giving them instance data on brain injury and intellectual disabilities, and would go down my list. And at the end, in that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, I remember saying that, and the prevalence rate for people with autism is .0000000000000, and then added a final number at the end of that long string of zeros. That is not the case today. We're seeing many more youngsters with ASD come into our program, and in fact could call it a great wave that we're trying to deal with. It is startling to note that in 2006 we had numbers with about 1 in 100, 1 in 110. Yet just last year that number was down to 1 in 88. And even more important is the instance data that we get from our colleagues within special education, which notes that there's been a 1,500% increase in data with youngsters with ASD in the special ed system. And that truly is startling. We also are seeing that the VR system is looking at more and more youngsters with ASD. We can see that nationally people with autism applying for VR services has increased 300% since 2003, again from 03 to 05. Largely this is based on transition students, and I'm quite proud to note that in the Commonwealth we have been working with youngsters in transition since the mid-80s, largely due to some federal grants we were able to get back at that time. But nonetheless, across the nation there is this influx of youngsters with ASD that are coming to us, and it's incumbent on us to figure out what we can do to better respond to them. We'd also like to thank Scott Standifer for some of this data that shows the increase in this population. Now, as the VR director, there's several things that I need to address periodically as we manage our agency. And one of those things is that we see that when we look at our population successfully transitioning from school to work, perhaps at around almost 60% success rate, only 33% of our young adults with ASD are employed. And that's a number that we got from a colleague here at the University of Richmond, Dr. David Dean, who has been able to go back and look at some earning data, not necessarily VR data, but earning data, wage data that we're able to capture that fully embraces this. And we also see that youngsters with ASD are not sustaining themselves and being successful in staying in the Commonwealth's workforce. This is something that we just could not tolerate. We really needed to look into that, and that was one of the goals that we did with this study. It is also alarming to see the difference in earning capacity with youngsters with ASD averaging under $200 a week versus other comparable youngsters that are earning $316 a week. Again, not a substantial income to be able to survive necessarily, but nonetheless, I think the difference in these data points is really important. And we see that their long-term earning capacity also becomes stagnant. What challenges forced us to look into this? Well, we saw that one of the pieces was working with the youngsters. We just did not have that much expertise. We have been able to do a fine job with many individuals in many different populations, but really appreciating the challenges that youngsters with ASD brought to our VR system was something that we did not have. And going from an entitlement system to an eligibility system was something that was difficult. A lack of VR providers. Many times in the Commonwealth we work with community rehab programs or CRPs, and there was just not a vibrant community of people with the skills that were needed to be able to properly program. And the behaviors that many of these youngsters bring to us are different. Their lack of social skills, the different manner in which they learn, the behavioral challenges that they bring to the work site is making us look at things differently. And the very short-term nature of our Voc Rehab program made us look and see what type of evidence-based research could we find that would help us. One of the major points was trying to look at some of the research, and we were able to come up with one very exciting opportunity to employ project searches based on the work that was done in Cincinnati several years ago, but working with hospitals, school systems, to make sure that we could provide a learning environment for several of our youngsters with ASD in the Richmond community. We've had great success, in fact, working with the Medical College of Virginia and St. Mary's Hospital in Henrico County, working with the school systems in the city and the county, with the two hospitals, some successful vendors to provide on-site supports. And over the last 3 years, it gives me a great deal of pride to say that we have had a 100% employment rate with the 6 to 8 people in each of the project search classes that go through a series of rotations at the hospital in their last school year, learning to be more effective in the work site. And as one who's been fortunate to go to many of the graduations of these project searches, it's exciting to see the transformation that occurs in these youngsters. Specifically, when you look at one of our project search graduates who came in at the beginning of the year in September, not being very successful in social interactions, not being very well connected, not being able to follow some basic tasks and be able to do some of the basic social skills that many of us and most of our clients can deal with. And in June, seeing them successfully graduate and seeing how that not only do they embrace their colleagues in the work setting, but they are embraced by their colleagues in the work setting, and seeing how this social interaction and employment experience mirrored with some remedial learning along the way can be a very successful intervention that proves sometimes costly but overwhelmingly successful. And in a system like ours, which is looking always towards outcomes, it is important to make sure that we can see that. And I cannot underscore the importance of seeing the transformation of these youngsters as they go from children in the school system to valued colleagues into the work site. That is something that I think is something that we have learned. It's evidence-based, and it's proven to be a very successful venture for us in the Commonwealth, and it's directly related to some of the research that we started several years ago. That ends my segment. We look forward to continuing our successes and, more importantly, sharing some of what we do with anybody that's willing to take the time to listen, because we think that we have come upon some successful strategies based on research that can be a positive influence on transforming a voc rehab system that heretofore has had some problems with youngsters with ASD into one that can truly find a place for them to succeed and thrive within the workforces of our states. Our next speaker will be sharing some of his experience, and I will turn this program now over to Richard Kriner, a valued colleague and employee at the Department of Rehab Services in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this presentation. You just had the opportunity to hear from Commissioner Rothrock and get a picture of some of the challenges that VR service agencies are facing in providing supports and services to individuals on the autism spectrum. Commissioner Rothrock talked about the increase in demand, the low quality employment outcomes that we're seeing, the lack of evidence-based research models, and the lack of access to adult services and supports. For this next portion of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about some of the evidence-based research projects that Virginia's vocational rehab system is involved in. Real quickly, before I go into that, I would like to touch on why we do this research and why Virginia Department of Rehab Services decided to engage in this project. As you can see on the slide, the benefits include improving quality of employment outcomes. And as I talk about the research projects, you'll get a chance to hear a little bit more specifically about this, but the projects that we're involved in aren't only giving us an opportunity to learn about which models fit the VR system, they're also resulting in immediate employment outcomes for our consumers on the autism spectrum. In addition, as a result of participating in this evidence-based research, we get the chance to identify strategies that would fit across other VR contexts, things that we can expand and develop capacity for in the agency that we would expect to have a similar positive impact in other community environments. And then lastly, the staff that are participating in these research projects have had the opportunity to increase their knowledge of evidence-based and best practices for supporting individuals on the autism spectrum. They've also had the opportunity to develop competency in the application of best practice interventions, such as proactive visual supports, or positive behavioral supports, or the use of handheld technology as a cognitive behavioral aid to support somebody with autism in the workplace. So moving on to the next slide, what I'd like to do is give you a real brief overview of Virginia's major autism project, which is a VCU ASD Career Links grant. This is a grant funded through the National Institute on Disability, Rehab, and Research. And we're funding 4 research models out of this project. And through this research, we're looking at vocational rehab models for individuals on the autism spectrum. For today's presentation, I'm not going to talk about all 4 of these research studies due to time limitations. What I am going to talk about is 2 of these research studies that are applied research studies that involve our VR clients and VR staff and have already started to demonstrate some positive employment outcomes. I would like to note, though, for those of you who are interested in getting more information on the Career Links studies that we're doing and hear about some case studies, you can access this information on our website. It's at vcu/autism.org. So again, I will be talking about 2 of the applied research projects, to include a project search replication where we're supporting individuals on the autism spectrum, and our assistive technology for cognition study where we're using the iPod Touch as a cognitive behavioral aid for individuals receiving supported employment that are on the autism spectrum. I would like to give credit to our principal investigator on our project search replication, Dr. Carol Shaw. And note that this is a random control study. I'm not going to get into all of the study protocols today. I'm going to be focusing on the individuals that are being served at the intervention site. Before I get into the specifics in terms of what we're doing that has a unique autism focus, I would like to give you the big picture of the project search model and some of the characteristics that make this a effective model for supporting individuals that are transitioning from school to work. These characteristics include the collaborative nature of the model, which involves interagency relationships and service coordination between our public school partners, between the VR agency, between the individuals with disabilities and their families, and between the private businesses that we're working with in the community. This model also is based on an early intervention approach so that we get the students in their last year of school before they have transitioned out into the adult world, and we give them that opportunity to get the experience in competitive employment through immersion in a business. The other thing about this model that makes it really effective is these individuals who are in a community business and having the opportunity to learn work skills and to learn soft skills and to learn social skills are being supported. We have job coaches on site at the project search location as well as school staff. Typically in our autism study we've had a student to staff ratio of 2-to-1. Another benefit of this model is that it would allow for continual assessment, career exploration, and employment planning. The model takes place parallel to the school year, so it's a 9-month program. The students, over the course of that 9 months, will have a chance to participate in 3 internships that last for approximately 10 weeks. So again, this is a great chance for the students not only to learn about things that they're interested in and learn about some of their strengths, but for the staff that are providing supports to these individuals to gain a better understanding of what their strengths are in the workplace, what their preferences are, and what supports they're going to need to be successful as they move into employment. The other benefit of this model is that it's structured for the partners and for the businesses. Everybody who's participating in this model, to include the partners as well as the individuals with disabilities and the families that are going to be involved in this, have a clear understanding of what services are going to be provided, who's going to be providing those services, and what each partner's role in supporting the success of this model is. The other thing I want to hit on with this structured process between the partners and the business is the nature of this collaboration. It really is taking this community approach to addressing shared challenges and shared goals in terms of creating success for individuals on the autism spectrum. Lastly, I would like to note that the project search model is a business-focused model. It uses a single point of entry to facilitate a positive and efficient experience for the business. We have one ESO that would be working within that business, develop relationships with the managers and with the organization's leadership, and continue to ensure that the project is moving along successfully. In terms of looking back at the history of the model, it was developed in Cincinnati by Aaron Riley in 1996. And Aaron Riley developed this model to address a business need. And as you look at the model, you can see that this model is creating an opportunity for businesses to bring young adults into the system, to train them, and then move them into positions where they have high needs. Moving on to the next bullet, I would like to talk a little bit about some of the autism-focused supports that the Department of Rehab Services has recognized as being valuable to our clients that are participating in the program. These would include things like staff that are trained and understand the characteristics of autism and how those characteristics impact somebody's ability to learn and use new job skills, to socialize in the work environment, and their support needs in the work environment. In addition, we have a model here that embeds proactive supports. For example, some of the things that we make sure our students have access to is a structured and predictable experience as they go into their internships. All the job coaches and the school staff are familiar with things like visual supports. They're familiar with things like creating physical structure in the environment. They also put a great deal of effort into working with the employer and educating coworkers and supervisors so that they understand not only the individual that they're working with, but they understand good general rules for communicating and working with individuals on the autism spectrum based on some of those underlying cognitive, behavioral, emotional challenges that an individual on the spectrum might present with. Lastly, we have integrated 2 new interventions at this project search site to include the use of handheld technologies as cognitive behavioral aids. We're making this possible through ensuring that the staff that are providing supports at this site have access to the technology, have gone through training in the technology, and are able to effectively provide supports to the clients in using these handheld technologies. And I'm going to be talking in a little bit more detail about the kind of things that we can do with these iPod touches and using them as cognitive behavioral aids in the workplace. The other new intervention that we've been able to integrate into this site is a result of having the good fortune of working with Dr. Carol Shaw, who is really a national expert in positive behavioral supports and employment, is to ensure that all the individuals that are participating in this program have access to positive behavioral supports. And if required, have the opportunity to have a specialist who's a positive behavioral support facilitator come in, do a functional assessment, develop a plan, and work with the job coaches and school personnel and co-workers and supervisors that are supporting these students and employees in this workplace to ensure that they're developing pro-social behaviors that lead to success in the workplace. And again, and I'll talk a little bit more about Virginia's model for using behavioral supports and the positive behavioral support approach that we've started to adopt across the Commonwealth. The next study I wanted to talk about today is the Assistive Technology for Cognition project. I would like to give credit to the principal investigator on this study, Dr. Tony Gentry. He is also somebody who really is at that level of a national expert in understanding the use of this handheld technology as a cognitive behavioral aid, and has published several journal articles, and to include a recent journal article in the Journal of Vocational Rehab that talks about the value of this type of technology in supporting individuals on the autism spectrum. In addition, I would like to note that Dr. Carol Shaw in that same 2010 edition of the Journal of Vocational Rehab did an article on positive behavioral supports for individuals in the workplace that have an autism spectrum disorder. And I would highly recommend for those individuals who are interested in getting more information on these unique interventions to take a look at that issue of the Journal of Vocational Rehab. So in terms of what we're doing with the PDAs, we're looking at the impact of PDAs, and specifically iPod touches, on individuals with autism spectrum disorders receiving supported employment in the workplace. The way the project works is an individual who is randomized into the intervention group receives an iPod touch and then meets with Dr. Gentry, who's an occupational therapist, to get the device set up and receive training on the device. The device is set up based on that individual's unique support needs and the environment that they're going to be working in. We include a job coach throughout this process. The job coach will go through the training, and the job coach will be involved in the device setup, and then the job coach is involved in providing the on-the-job supports to the individual that's involved in this research study. One of the things that we're starting to recognize is there is a lot of value in terms of positive impact with use of this technology and benefit from this technology when the job coach that we're working with has knowledge, experience, and confidence in the use of this technology. A little bit later on, I'm going to talk to you about some pilots that DRS has going on to help develop capacity within the Commonwealth for more job coaches to be able to provide this service and have a high degree of competency in the use of this technology. Lastly, I do want to note that the VR agency is purchasing the technology, purchasing the applications, and the hardware based on the recommendations of the OT is another part of our role in this research study. In terms of talking about the way this technology works, again, I'm just going to be able to skim the benefits and the impact of this technology. I would like to refer you to the VCU ASD Career Links site to take a look at some of our practice briefs if you want more detailed information. As you look at this next slide, you'll see on the left-hand side a list of some of the different applications that are available on this technology. In that list, I have some of the things that are on-board apps that come with the technology when you purchase it from the store. And there's also a few apps that we've started to identify as having a positive impact that are things that you could purchase for individuals on the autism spectrum. A little bit later on, you're going to be hearing from one of our VR counselors who's working out in the field with individuals who are participating in this project and who are using this technology. And she'll give you some more specific examples of how we're using this. Some of the things, though, I will touch on that we're using would include things like notes and checklists to help individuals learn and remember new work tasks, to stay on time. Reminder alarms are something that the majority of individuals participating in the research have reported as having a positive impact in terms of helping them transition from one task to the next, helping them produce at the level that's expected in the work site, helping them get ready for work, and so on. Another thing on there that I have listed would be visual supports. And examples of the visual supports would be maybe using photos to go along with a task analysis to help somebody remember specific steps in a job, or using a video to show the individual performing the steps of a job correctly. So I've talked to you about two research studies, specifically two of the studies from the Career Links research grant that involved DRS clients, DRS staff, and where we've started to see some positive employment outcomes. Now I want to talk to you about how this experience is changing the way Virginia's VR system is providing services to individuals on the spectrum. Our involvement in this research has helped us to start to recognize that there really are three important facets to an effective service model for individuals on the spectrum. These things would include the structure of the program. And when I say structure, I'm talking about things like the timing. For example, we talked about Project Search and the fact that that's an effective model, and one of the unique characteristics of that model is the fact that we're working with individuals before they exit the school system. The intensity of supports is another thing that's very important. Commissioner Rothrock made a note of this earlier on in the presentation, that it's important to provide the right intensity of supports and the right level of supports on the front end if we're going to give these individuals an opportunity to be successful in the VR program and in the workplace. And lastly, in the environment's very important when we talk about structure. One of the things that we know about individuals on the spectrum is that they are going to be more effective at transitioning learning skills or transferring learning skills from one environment to the next if there's a high correlation between the environment that they're learning the skills in and the environment that they're going to be applying the skills. So having that opportunity to work in a community environment and a business has been really valuable. The services are also important. Some of the services that DRS is starting to invest in are things that are new to our agency. Things like the use of handheld technology as cognitive behavioral aids and positive behavioral supports are services that we identified through this grant as being valuable. Other things that we are doing are tweaks to existing services to allow more flexibility to really get to that level of intensity and support that I talked about. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more specificity in a minute here. Lastly, I really want to emphasize the value of teaming. And this is something that really is the glue that holds everything together that I've talked about so far. And as you hear our VR counselor come on a little bit later on and talk about her experience, you'll get the sense of how important the DRS counselor or the VR counselor is to that process. They're really the individual who's going to take the lead in creating structure for the team, and orchestrating the services, and identifying the services and support, and educating providers in how to work together. Also, when I talk about teaming, it gets to that level of training for providers, making sure providers understand autism and the characteristics of autism, and positive support strategies for working with individuals on the spectrum, and proactive strategies for working with individuals on the spectrum, and how to use things like the handheld technology. Lastly, in talking about teaming, I would like to note that another important aspect is learning how systems, similar to what we're doing with the Project Search model, can leverage resources and coordinate supports so that we're working collaboratively to our mutual benefit to achieve a mutual goal of success for our consumers. So some of the new approaches that we're seeing in Virginia would include things like an enhanced approach to community-based assessment, an enhanced approach to service planning, and an enhanced approach to training. In addition, and I've talked about this a little bit already, we have developed opportunities to provide and purchase positive behavioral support services for our clients. We're looking at ways to provide a more holistic approach for consumers by bringing community supports into the picture. And these would be things like getting with consumers in their families in the home, or in the post-secondary environment, or in the community, and helping them work on those life skills like hygiene, social skills, planning, organizing, problem-solving skills, those things that are really critical to the workplace. Lastly, we're using the PDAs as a tool to help provide visual supports, schedules, and help individuals on the spectrum manage and cope with anxiety and other challenges such as social skills. We talked about the fact that Virginia has recognized the need for training, and so we're working with providers that understand autism and creating opportunities for training. We're specifically, some of the training that we're using would be training job coaches, VR counselors, rehab engineers, and the use of proactive support strategies that address some of the social, communication, sensory challenges that individuals on the spectrum have. And then we're working with employers and educating employers and developing natural supports. Again, I talked about how powerful this has been in our project search sites, and Commissioner Rothrock also noted on this. Do want to make a note here that in terms of capacity building, and I can't overemphasize this enough, that training and skills development is really important. I talked about working with our vocational service providers and recognizing that many of them, as part of their traditional programs, aren't having access to training on supports for autism and proactive supports, and so we're ensuring that there's opportunities for that here in Virginia, and that's an important consideration for other VR agencies. We're providing hands-on training through some of our pilot programs for job coaches and making sure that they have access to this technology so that they're familiar with it and comfortable with it, and that they can do a better job of supporting our clients in the workplace with it. And then we're also helping to address a gap in services by sponsoring training for individuals that we work with that would traditionally provide job coaching supports to go through a Virginia Positive Behavioral Support Facilitator training program. Just a real quick note on positive behavioral supports. It is a model that we're adopting here in Virginia to address behavioral challenges. The way we're using it is both at a proactive level in terms of providing education to agency staff on positive behavioral supports so that we can do a better job of designing services that prevent behaviors. So, for example, designing services to the point that we're doing a good job of matching individuals with job preferences and strengths and work skills and putting them in a work environment that's going to match those things. In addition, I noted earlier, we've created the opportunity to purchase this service from our vendors. And so DRS counselors can now go out and hire a positive behavioral support facilitator or a board-certified behavior analyst to come in, do a functional behavioral assessment, develop a plan, and work with a team to create interventions and do skills development to help individuals overcome challenging behaviors and develop new pro-social behaviors that lead to success in the workplace. Another thing with the behavioral supports that I want to emphasize is that it's a team-based approach. So the positive behavior support providers are working with our VR counselors, they're working with our job coaches, they're working with our community support providers, and we're ensuring that the interventions that are being developed are being reinforced across different environments to facilitate the success. The job coach is very important to this model, specifically because we are using this in the workplace, and the job coach is already the point person in many cases. The behavior support facilitator is using the job coach to implement the interventions that are outlined in the plan, as well as collect data. The impact of these, of our experience here in Virginia, is creating a greater awareness and knowledge of best practices such as the behavioral supports and the handheld technology. It's leading to immediate employment outcomes. Commissioner Rothrock talked about the successful placement rate that we're having out of our Henrico County Henrico County Project Search site, with 100% of the individuals participating in that program being placed in jobs. It's also shaping the way that DRS is approaching service. I talked about new models for assessment and the way that we're using a teaming approach more effectively now. As we transition to the next part of this presentation, you're going to get a chance to hear from Jessica Steele, who is a transition counselor with DRS in one of the regions that's been piloting some of these new experiences or these new services. And she's going to be able to give you a perspective from that VR counselor level about the impact it's having on her as a VR counselor and the success she's experiencing with her clients, as well as the impact that it's having on the individuals that she serves and the partners that are collaborating with her on providing these services and interventions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Steele now.
Hi, as Richard said, I'm a VR counselor and I work with transition students in the Fairfax area. And what I want to talk to you about is the new service models and how I've been implementing them and how we've been working as a team to really serve individuals on the autism spectrum as best as possible. The keys to effective assessment is just starting with an expanded assessment in the home, in the community, in post-secondary environments, in work environments, so that we can all get to know our individual and understand his strengths, his or her preferences, interests, know what motivates the participant. It's really also important to know what the individual doesn't like and what triggers the individual and what is maybe a fearful environment. And that's the best way to help implement effective services after the assessment process. Using an integrative, person-centered planning approach is what's been most effective for the individuals that we've been working with, and that means, involving, if there's school people, school staff still involved, parents, significant family members, and of course at the forefront of who's guiding the service is the individual. And as the VR counselor, I'm there to help educate the team on the process and why all of these assessments at the beginning for the client, it might feel like so much, but why this is going to help in the long run with the best outcomes and improved quality of life. So as I was saying, starting with the good assessment, with a comprehensive good assessments is imperative, because from that's where we create a plan that will meet the individual's needs and will be very personalized so that we can have the results we're looking for. Working as a team is, of course, important, and having that structure of knowing what services should be implemented at what time. It's important not to overwhelm the individual or to incorporate services that just might not be appropriate just yet. And what we've been learning is that getting to know the family, the home life, really helps with this process. Sometimes the family is incredibly supportive. Other times the family maybe isn't as supportive as we would wish. And so that's where we need to know, okay, can we use some of the devices that Richard's been talking about before, like the iPod Touch, the PDAs at home, or will that learning not be reinforced? Should we wait till the person's working with a job coach and looking for a job? The importance is using proactive social supports like the PBS, work in the work environment. Really what we found to be the biggest challenge is some behaviors that are not acceptable or appreciated in public, and that has been what's hard for people to really retain jobs. So we've been implementing PBS supports where we have pro-social learning and where the person can start to feel more independent and have better self-confidence because he or she is being an active member at work, is retaining a job, and being a participating member in the community. What we've learned a lot is that there has to be a higher intensity of supports, especially at the beginning, and it has to be a holistic approach. And this has been a change from the way I've been working with some other individuals with different challenges, in the sense that I am starting up services, more intensive services, a lot younger. I have one individual I'm going to talk about in a few minutes who he still has a couple years left in the public school system, and he has an array of services. But we know that this is going to improve his outcomes in the long run. And by outcomes, I mean not only employment, but his quality of life and his feelings about himself. As Richard was talking about, the PDAs have been an awesome thing that we've been using and have been really finding great results with. It starts with a PDA assessment, which we've been using our assistive technology specialist, who's an OT person, and she has been figuring out, okay, is this someone who feels comfortable using PDAs? Is this someone who, has familiarity with it, is motivated by using the PDA, could benefit from the PDA? For some people with anxiety, she'll test out different anxiety apps. Do we see a decrease in anxiety, or is it just no impact at all? So, before just assuming that my individual can benefit from the PDA, we want to do that first assessment, and then get it set up, and the loaning period is important too, to confirm, okay, this is going to be a benefit to the person, it's worth purchasing. The job coach is really important with the PDAs. The job coach helps with identifying what are the best applications to use, how to best use the device for the client to benefit from it. And that's where education and training comes in. As VR professionals working with individuals on the spectrum, we have to be knowledgeable about what's out there to help our individuals. And so it was great as a counselor. I got to participate in Dr. Tony Gentry's training on PDAs, and so I'm very familiar with how to use them, and I can help, guide the team with, okay, I know that this person struggles with anxiety, or this person has difficulty with organizational skills, and so then, we can identify what are good apps to help deal with those. In terms of purchasing the equipment, for working in Virginia's VR system, we're able to purchase for our clients that might have SSI or SSDI or meet financial needs. But what's also wonderful is that for individuals who don't fit that criteria, there's grants out there to help link them with this device that can just really make a world of differences. So as the VR counselor, it's important to be knowledgeable about how to access the equipment, and in a manner that's not going to be, cost prohibitive to the individual. The coordination of the PDA supports across all environments is really what is so essential. If a person is having tantrums at work and that's being addressed so that the person can maintain the job, it's not okay if he or she goes home and the parents allow tantrums. That just reinforces the behavior that is causing problems. So that's where it's getting everyone on board with reinforcing what's being taught, and it's, again, just helping the individual in the long run. So I want to talk about one of my clients who has been benefiting from all of these new service models that we've been implementing. Amber is a 25-year-old female. She's on the spectrum. She also has some physical limitations after surgery. Amber struggles with high anxiety, and she has some behavioral support needs. Amber has been out of high school. She aged out at 22, and she's just been sitting at home for several years. And so getting her involved with these new support services and doing the comprehensive assessment up front has been huge in helping Amber get a job. She completed the intensive assessment process, going to a mailroom, going to Marshall's, and she was administrative assistant somewhere. She got to try out all those jobs. She then did like a community leisure assessment, and we quickly learned that Amber spends all of her time at home. She's not used to being out in public. She doesn't have any friends outside of the home, and we realized, okay, we need to incorporate building up Amber's social support or just interest activities outside of the house to help her be, someone who's integrated in the community. Amber also went to Virginia's VR program has linked with a training center called the Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitation Center, and she did a lot of assessments down there. And that was a wonderful example of, having the services meet the individual's needs and not making Amber meet, what's identified as the typical way a service works. Amber was not someone who would do very well staying in the dorms, which is typically what happens when we have individuals that go down to Woodrow Wilson. So that's where, as a team, we knew that wouldn't be a good fit, so we spoke with Woodrow, and we had some help making it that Amber could stay in a hotel with her family and then be dropped off for during the day to participate in her assessments. And the other wonderful thing is that since we knew Amber, we knew to say, okay, we need to have a team meeting up front, and we need to have, the counselor down at Woodrow who's going to be working with Amber, have her involved so we can talk about, okay, what are some of Amber's challenges and what are we looking to get out of this? And that's not something we do typically for most individuals, but for Amber it was really helpful. It helped, ease her anxiety a bit. And it just really helped to make sure that she already had a relationship with her counselor before she went down there. And then her counselor down there was amazing, met with Amber every day. Amber at times, just was tearful, wanting to go home, and speaking with the counselor, getting, some support and reassurance. And then knowing that she could go see her family at the end of the day, Amber stuck it out. And that, I think, was wonderful to make her feel better about herself. I mean, that you could tell when she got back, like she felt good about that she was able to complete that assessment, and we learned a lot from it, particularly in terms of, some of the independent living skills Amber needs to work on. So going on now, Amber is actually working. She had a job coach who is highly educated in working with people on the spectrum, and that's been so important, having service providers who know how to specialize services so that they meet these individuals' specific needs. And so the job coach was able to, identify Amber's employment strengths and then be able to sell those to the employer and help the employer realize that, Amber is going to be a valued and valuable employee and is going to do a good job, and that the things that are challenging, we are going to help with that, and we're going to take care of that so that, Amber can work there for a long time. So Amber is starting up with the positive behavioral supports. She's someone that we realized, okay, we tried at first to start the plan up before Amber was working, and we realized that given her home life, that wouldn't work. Both her parents work long days, Amber's home alone, so it was really hard to collect data to figure out what was going to be good what behaviors did we need to target, what was going to be good interventions to use. So we're starting now while she's at work. There's 1 more week left of data to be collected. But the behaviors that we're targeting, they're going to be targeted in the plan are her low frustration tolerance, which leads to, she tends to cry at work sometimes when she's just frustrated. And then also customer service. That's an area of challenge. When I was speaking about Amber's assessments, one of them was at Marshall's, and that was the one she liked the best. So she was able to get a job at a similar store, and her job is really focusing on organizational stuff, making sure that a certain area of the store looks neat, customers can find things. But being employed on a store floor, Amber does have to provide good customer service as well, even though that's not the main function of her job role. So in working with Amber, we're going to use the positive behavioral supports, but also the iTouch to help. Right now, the iTouch is being helped so Amber can self-monitor some of her behaviors, and that's really important because she did not have much self-awareness. And in order for change to be elicited, one has to have self-awareness. So Amber's doing a good job with that, and her job coach is collecting data too, which will help then the positive behavioral supports facilitator create a wonderful plan. And the goal is to use some apps like the iCounselor, some breathing apps, meditation apps to help with that anxiety I was talking about. There's also, we're going to use the video recorder on the iPod Touch so that Amber can work on her customer service skills. So how that would go, Amber would see a recording of someone providing very good customer service, and Amber would identify, okay, why was that good, what made it good, so that then she can see, okay, what does that look like. Then Amber will get recorded providing customer service, and then she'll get to go back and look at what she did and say, okay, did that match the person who was doing a good job? And if it didn't, then Amber will identify, okay, what wasn't so good? Was it eye contact, or was it speaking clearly? Sometimes Amber does, mumbles, doesn't speak clearly. Was it body language? And Amber will keep then going through and doing a practice of providing support or customer service. And then Amber will watch herself, and with her job coach will say, okay, what was well, what still needs to be changed, until Amber goes through and does a really good job. And that will be saved on her iPod. She can watch that several times before work. She can watch it on breaks. She can watch it when maybe the store isn't very busy and she's completed her job duties and she's prepping for when it might get more busy. So we know that that's going to be helpful. And then also, like I said, the anxiety apps I think will help with when she might get tearful and be frustrated. Okay, so now moving on, here are some visuals of some of the apps I was talking about, like the Behavior Assessment Pro, which can help people with the self-monitoring, whether it's behaviors or whether it's exercise or health, any of that stuff. It's really a good way for people to become more aware. You identify how often the behavior occurs, list the settings, all of that stuff. The next is the iCounselor anxiety app, where you get to rate this one you rate how anxious you are, and then it gives you instructions of what to do about how to decrease the anxiety. Then there's the breathing to relax, which is just guided breathing, which a lot of people find to be very relaxing. So Alex, who's someone else who's going to use the iPod Touch, is a high school student, and we started with the comprehensive assessments with Alex while he had 3 years left before he aged out. And he's been using right now person-centered planning and community support services, and he's starting to use assistive technology. Through Alex's assessments, in the community, at home, he went to the Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitation Center. We learned that a hands-on job, mechanical job would be great for Alex. His favorite assessment was at Jiffy Lube. So we've identified that, but Alex does have a lot of work to do so that he can be employed and keep a job. We definitely have realized that some things that need to be addressed are Alex's social skills, Alex's personal hygiene, his independence skills, and time management, organizational skills. So Alex has been in creating his person-centered plan. We've helped Alex identify what's important to him and what's important for him for his life goals. And then, okay, now you know that what's important, what do you need to do, what help do you need with so that you can reach your goals? And this is where, again, having a team involved. Alex's mom has been great in coming to all meetings and giving follow-up and info on what's going on at home. And then I'll be at the meetings, and his job coach is at the meetings to do the PCP process. With the community support services, Alex is getting help with organizational skills. His room at home, we hear, is just an absolute mess. He can never find anything. But Alex doesn't like how his mom cleans it up and organizes it. So we decided, okay, it's important for Alex to create a system that works for him, where he can find stuff, but also he's living at home in his parents' house. He also needs to abide by some of their rules and expectations as well. So the important thing is having Alex feel like he's heard. He has a voice, he's heard, he's understood, and he has a say in things. But it's also helping Alex realize, as an individual, whether it's a child at home or, a person in society or an employee on the job, there's also some expectations and rules that have to be followed. So he's getting help with that, and then he's going to be doing, like I said before, the AT this summer. He's going to use a loaner iPod Touch. He was someone who we weren't quite sure if he'd take to it right away. And given that his mom, works all the time, and then there's some other, family dynamics and challenges that would be hard to make sure that everything was reinforced at home, we didn't want to set Alex up with the PDA device until there was a job coach in place and, a consistent structure for him to make sure it is used appropriately and assessed, for real, okay, is this useful or not? If we just sent it home with Alex without a job coach, we might think it never was useful, but like with the job coach there to help, we could find that it really is useful. He just needs someone in the beginning to help figure it out, learn, teach him how to use the app, set up the appropriate apps and tools on the device. This summer, Alex is participating in a work adjustment program, and that's really important for him because we learned he's at his high school. He's finished his 4 years at the traditional high school, and now he's at a public vocational training school, and he gets to have go out on site to an internship, and that was very beneficial for Alex to help improve his work skills. And so we wanted to continue that, and this summer he's been set up with the work adjustment program that will not only continue to work on his social skills, but also give him an opportunity to work a couple days, volunteer work in the community. So he keeps building on his learning and nothing's lost. And that is where, as the VR counselor, it's important to know what's out there for individuals to use. Alex is someone who has tapped into many service providers, and he's working with 3 different vendors and me, and then he's been set up with benefits planning so that we can help him to retain his benefits while he's earning money during high school, because one of his internships did pay him. So that's where it's just really important as the counselor to know, okay, who can provide what to meet my individual's needs. So for Alex, I'm most excited for him with the iPod Touch. He just came to a meeting. His dad had dropped him off, and his mom had met us there because she was at work or something, and Alex was looking kind of disheveled. He wasn't showered, hadn't brushed his teeth, didn't bring his wallet, and we needed his ID for something. And you could tell his mom felt bad, and I asked Alex, well, why, what's going on here? Because he had been doing a lot better with wearing clean clothes and everything. And Alex said, well, no one told me what to do. And that's where immediately I was like, okay, as soon as you get the loaner, we're going to get you set up with, the morning task list. Because also during the meeting, Alex got a little nervous. He didn't know the time, and he likes to know the time always. And I asked, well, why didn't you wear my watch? Well, no one told me to put it on. So that's where, he needs to have, okay, wake up, what to do first, next, and then the checklist of before I leave the house, do I have my watch on? Do I have my wallet? And why I think this is going to be so helpful for Alex is because he often complains that his mom nags a lot. And his mom, freely admits, yeah, it probably is nagging because he doesn't do this stuff otherwise. And having the PDA, that's going to kind of do the nagging, but in a positive way. That's going to tell Alex what he needs to do, when, how to do it. If he has to do a chore and he can't remember how, that he can have the video to watch himself doing it correctly. So that's going to help improve the home life a lot in terms of his relationship with his parents, and how he feels about them, and then how they feel about him. Being like an active contributing member of their household. So just in wrapping up, some key points to leave you with that we've learned with all of these new service models is the importance of just starting with strong, comprehensive assessments, of understanding the individual, of understanding the disability and its impacts on social, emotional, cognitive functioning, and on communication and behavior, and also sometimes the sensory issues that come up because of the disability. And then taking all of that information learned and creating a plan that's going to address all of the areas that need to be addressed so the individual can meet his or her goals. We've learned through all of these services, job goals for clients. Some clients have changed their job goals because they learned about, an employment option that they didn't know was out there, they didn't know they'd be good at or that they'd like. We've become more aware of clients' strengths and their skills, and sometimes as professionals we underestimate our individuals. And so, I know I've been surprised plenty of times being like, oh, okay, he can do that, or yes, she can do that. That is an option. No one needs to be pigeonholed in a low-level job. But it's really the importance of a holistic approach and having services fit the client, not the client fit, old models. And what I'm most excited about is that clients are learning more about themselves, and they are learning, that there are possibilities out there, and they're learning not only about work, but about interests, and it's going to improve their quality of life. Thank you.